pleasure to be here, and I just want to thank Gary, Rob, and Lisa for all taking the time. I think it'll be a great discussion. Thank you to each of you for coming today. It's a pleasure to be here, and obviously these folks represent great businesses in our great state of Ohio. And so, I think what would be helpful, maybe just to start off, is if each of you could just give a 1 or 2 minute introduction of yourselves and your businesses, I think it would be helpful for the audience. Lisa?
You want me to start? Okay, so I am the president and CEO of White Castle. Anybody here heard of White Castle? Okay, good. I love that. So we are a fourth generation business. It was founded by my great grandfather in 1921, so we're 103 years old. And some of the things you may not know about White Castle. So in addition to 340 restaurants that we operate across 14 different states, we also have 8 manufacturing facilities, 3 of them here in Ohio. And we process our own beef and make our beef patties that are in our restaurant product and our retail product. We also have 2 bakeries, and we have 3 facilities that process our retail products. So while we only have 340 restaurant locations in 14 states, we sell our retail product, which is the same exact product that we make in the restaurants. We sell that in all 50 states through grocery, mass, and convenience, et cetera. So that's a little bit about White Castle.
Great.
Rob Connelly, Executive Chairman at Henny. Overall, I'm probably in the right place.
Yes, you are.
From farm to maybe
Table.
hand.
Yeah.
We're a 67-year-old company. We're a manufacturer of commercial food equipment, ovens, fryers, holding equipment. We became employee-owned in 2015, which I'd love to talk to anybody about. It's the coolest structure that there is. But our customers are like Lisa. We are in the busiest kitchens in the world. And I would describe our equipment, if we were in like the auto business, we make the world's best bus. Many kitchens don't need a bus. They can just use a car. But if you have high volume, food is critical to your business, then we're going to help you with the consistency and the quality and the efficiency of doing it. And that's what Henny Penny does.
You make great fryers.
Yes.
Okay, well, hi, I'm Gary Cooper at Cooper Farms. We're located up in Northwest Ohio. We have about 2,500 people working for us, about 450 contract growers, and we're a diversified ag business. We produce turkeys, hogs, and chicken layers, and we do about 350 million live pounds of turkeys, about 225 million pounds of live hogs, and about 150 million dozen eggs. So hopefully one of those 3 products you've eaten sometime here recently, maybe today, right? So anyway, so we've been in business for 85 years. I'm second generation. My brother Jim, my sister Diane, and I operate the business. Our parents started, of course, in 38. And, we went very kind of the American dream type of thing. Started with our parents, with just them starting to raise turkeys. And here we are today. So I'm very happy to be here and talk about our business a little bit more.
Thank you all. Just a quick introduction. Mark Smucker, CEO of J.M. Smucker Company, 5th generation, based in Orrville, about an hour south of Cleveland. Publicly traded. My boss right here, Alex Shoemate, is our lead director. So thank you, Alex, for supporting me. We have a lot of brands. Coffee, Folgers, Dunkin', Pet, Milk-Bone, Meow Mix, Hostess, Twinkies, all of those nice things. Of course, jams, jellies, Jif peanut butter, Uncrustables, so you would know our products. And that's all you're going to hear from me about my business today. So what I'd like to do is just, thinking about the different food-related industries that each of you represent, they seem to fall into straightforward categories, which you just discussed. The production or sourcing of raw materials, Gary, processing, distribution, retail, and then obviously consumption. What would be nice if you guys could each just share a bit about the complexities that we miss when we zoom out too far, whether that's what we hear from policymakers or what categories of supplier needs are we missing? Maybe Gary, I'll start with you.
Sure. So in our business, probably a little bit different than my fellow speakers here. We can't turn off the water stream, right? Everything's live, it's coming down the chain, and so we just can't stop. And so what happened during COVID, and then you've all probably heard about bird flu, in those two big market disruptors, we just had to keep barreling forward. And during COVID, luckily, the president and the state said we were a vital business and that we could continue to operate, which was very interesting in all the regulations we had to do. But we actually got to a situation where, like on a Friday, we would get an email from our CO2 supplier, which we have to have CO2 to run our harvest plant. And they said, oh, by the way, on Monday, we might not be able to supply you CO2. Like, oh, no, you can't do that. you have to keep bringing it to us. And they're like, well, force majeure, contract this and contract that. So you can imagine some of us about crawled through their phone and choked a few people. But in the end, I think we shut down a few days during all that. But so that's, I think, the biggest thing I'd just like to imply on everyone, that when you're probably not in our line of business, you don't realize that it just keeps coming at us every day. Like, we process 27,000 48-pound tom turkeys every day. And so, they're out there in the barns, and there's no way to stop them. They're growing, and we have to get them to your Thanksgiving table. So I'd say that would be one of the big things I'd like to pass along.
And then we just cook them. And they keep coming. So, on the equipment side, there's about 500 manufacturers in North America that would be providing for the restaurants. So everything in Lisa's back of house and front of house all comes from the manufacturers that are in the food equipment business. I would say our biggest challenge is probably the ongoing compliance, where people are wanting to go with energy, where California wants to go with anything, and how we've got to manage through all of that. I would say the challenge that we found with supply chain, like everybody who's in manufacturing, was we had what we thought were our critical components that we were watching and maintaining. What became obvious during the pandemic was there might be 2,000 components in a fryer that we're working on. Well, every one of them became at risk. And every day we'd come in and there'd be somebody, get something where we can't get this gasket, and we'd maybe done business for 50 years. And we were like, well, what's going on? The guy's like, everybody's sick. And we're like, okay, we're sending people. But what the big learning was, everything became an issue that we were just trying to juggle, not one component. The challenge with that is, again, I remember going to something, it was like in 21, there was some conference I was at, and they said, well, what you all need to do now is not go from just in time, just stock a lot of parts. I was like, there aren't any. I was like, what am I doing at this conference? But that was just the challenge of how we looked and saw the challenges with our suppliers and how we would strengthen them and where we didn't see weakness. But I think the biggest challenge was just we didn't know. It could be anything at all that we made, which could hold us up.
Yeah, I totally agree. The thing I wrote down was parts for equipment. That was a big, big challenge. Something else that you may not think about in our business. So we had a challenge getting cheese. And so when you think about that, for a hamburger place, we sell a heck of a lot of cheeseburgers, and so not having cheese was not really a good situation to be in. And because of our unique size, our cheese has to go through a couple of different processes. Like, they make the cheese, and then they put it in the big blocks, and then they ship it to a processor who then puts it into the 2x2 squares. And so we had to, during the pandemic, we actually started harping our own cheese. So we had to buy this machine that's a harping machine. We had to then change and buy blocks of cheese because our cheese supplier couldn't give us time on the line because they were making things for everybody else who was just as demanding as we were. And so we found that the only way that we could get our cheese was to buy it in bulk and process it ourselves. And so this was a big sort of interesting thing that we had to deal with in the pandemic. So we literally were on allocation. We were not sending Walmart, Kroger, the big suppliers or the big retailers in the US cheeseburgers because we couldn't get cheese. And so we had to resort to sort of making the cheese the way that we needed it to by going one step up in the supply chain. And so for us, we were very happy that we are vertically integrated in our manufacturing, and that allowed us to be able to do that. But that was one of the things that sort of jumped out during the pandemic.
What are, of the things that you just discussed that were pandemic related, which of those changes or shifts that you made in your supply chains have you kept or you stuck with as we've come out of the pandemic?
Yeah, we're still harping the cheese. Really? Yeah, we are. Yep.
Any other changes that you maybe, a broader supply base or anything like that?
Yeah, I think we've been much more intentional about going through all of our suppliers and kind of when, grading, which we would have done, or we did, but just to a different level, was like, what is a unique component from a single source? That's much more at risk than, a common component from a single source or whatever. And so just going through that, it definitely exposed a lot of weaknesses that we had never experienced. And some of them, I'm not sure whether we will or not, but we saw a whole different way to evaluate our supply chain. And now it's working pretty well.
Yeah, and I'd say in our case, we'd gotten so used to short timelines to order things that we didn't have long-term contracts. And so coming out of COVID and the pandemic and everything, we started doing 2 and 3 year agreements with good quality companies that supply us. And then on the other hand, what's worked really good, again, with the high path AI or bird flu, which, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but in America alone, 90 million chickens, turkeys, ducks, geese, commercial have been euthanized because of high path AI, and around the world it's been 500 million. Now these are just the commercial flocks, so talk about market disruption, and that's why if you've noticed that eggs aren't 99 cents anymore a dozen, right? They could be $2, $3, or $4 a dozen. But on the bird flu side, it actually worked in our favor because, like what Rob's talking about, we actually had new customers come to us and say, I've only had one company providing me turkey or eggs, and I need 2. And you're in a different geographical part of America, so we'd like to talk to you about it. And we're like, yeah, that'd be great. So we picked up new customers because of that. So it's worked both ways.
Yeah, similarly, just second supply has been a big thing for us. Also, we need onions for our burgers, and so even talking to growers about when they're going to plant, how much they're going to plant, and locking those contracts in early on, it was something that also came out of the pandemic that really focused us more on our supply chain.
Great, thanks. I'm going to ask a 2-part question just about the fact that all of you, we all operate across the nation, or at least in multiple states. So the first part of the question is, how do you manage consistency across multiple geographies, particularly related to things like workforce, right? In making, because we were talking in an earlier meeting this morning about how workforces and those individuals who are in the service industry or maybe in factories don't love those jobs as much as they once did, and they want more work-life balance or more increased wages or what have you. How have you guys managed through some of the workforce challenges? That's the first part. And maybe I'll go to Rob first.
So we're selling all over the world. About half of our product is going international, but we manufacture 90% of it in Eaton, Ohio. We have a facility in Suzhou, China that is for some of Asia. But so what we have done, and we've, I think, accelerated this. We always were an employer of choice. I think we've hired everybody in Preble County. So we're, But it's really kind of this, when we became employee-owned and the opportunity of coming, it's a very different, just a very different environment from how we do the manufacturing to, and some people, forget, and when I'm going to talking to colleges or whatever, they, we'll talk about production and how production has changed and the type of job it is. But then it's like in Eaton, we have about little over 1,000 people. So 600 and some are hourly production. But there's 400 and some that are every other job you need to have to run a business. So, it's IT, it's marketing, it's finance, it's engineers. We have over 100 and some engineers working on trying to come up with ways in which we can help Lisa with her business. And so I think overall we've been very fortunate in that we are a place that people have wanted to come to. The biggest challenge is getting people to move, to Southwest Ohio. I'm just kind of imagining they're looking at their breakfast table in Charlotte, and it's like, hey, look at this opportunity. Where is it? Southwest Ohio. No. But if we can get people to come, they can see it's a totally different environment. Our biggest challenge is getting people to think about it and come.
So for us, it really is about being a best place to work. We do deal with lots of different labor laws in lots of different states, and that is definitely a challenge for us. But if you're going to do business in those states, then you need to be able to manage those appropriately and understand the costs of those in other states, because it is different than it is here in Ohio. And we also deal with labeling regulation in different states. So California in particular has some challenging labeling regulations that we need to follow, so we make sure that we follow all of those. But ultimately, from a cultural standpoint, it really is about, do they want to come and work for White Castle? Do they want to be part of the brand? Do they want to be part of the culture? We feel really good about our culture. We've had team members that have worked for us for 20, 30, 40 years. We were just awarded the Best Places to Work, again, for the 4th year in a row.
Congrats.
So, thank you. And so we continue to try to make sure that we meet team members where they are, that we're providing a great environment for them, that we're obviously paying competitively, but also that they really enjoy coming to work. They like making memorable moments. They love serving sliders or making sliders or supporting the team members that do that. And so for us, it really is all about culture and the kind of environment that we're creating for our teams.
Gary?
So I'd probably offer a little something different. So let me ask you a question. How many of you want to clean out turkey manure out of turkey barns? How about inseminate hogs? How about cut up turkeys on a line? No takers, and I bet you don't want your kids to do it either, right? So that's 2 generations out. So we went through a span through COVID where we ran out of applications. We had 250 open positions, and we were literally getting about 20 apps a week. And now, mind you, we're like, oh, Generation X, Ys, and Zs, they don't want to work. They're all in mom's basement playing video games, and we had all this. And then we went over to these big box stores, and we're like, wait, there's the Generation X, and there's the one in the grocery store, and well, why are they working here? They got no benefits, and they're low pay. We started asking questions. We found out magic word of flexibility. And we're like, yeah, we haven't been very flexible. So we literally had to take, and I could see a lot of us in here are baby boomers. We had to take off our baby boomer cap, which was really hard, and put on our Generation X, Y, and Z, and I barely even knew how to spell X, Y, and Z, so that was a tough one. And we made hundreds and hundreds of policy changes in our company, and we went from 25 a week, literally 2 years ago in May, to this winter we peaked at 500 apps a week. And last week we got 438. And we went from 250 positions down to about 22. Mind you, it's still cleaning up barns, inseminating hogs, and cutting up turkeys. So they are out there, but you have to treat those people differently. And that was a big lesson for us.
I think that's a really fascinating lesson that we've all had to learn and adapt to and maintain as we've come out of the pandemic. So, Lisa, you touched on this. I know this is a little off script, but you touched on, we're privileged to be headquartered in a state that is very, very supportive of business. And this administration has been very supportive of business. We have the freedom to operate. We have laws that protect us as businesses, that also support our employees. But we all do business in many other states, some of which are not as friendly to business, or some, one of the things that we see in our business, particularly as, in you're selling into grocery, label laws are different by state. And what's a benefit to businesses like ours is when we get consistent federal regulation that applies across all 50 states. And so anyone, I'm not going to call on anyone, maybe Lisa, since you touched on it first, start with you. How do you manage through the complexities of state-by-state regulations?
Yeah, it's very challenging. It also adds additional costs in our corporate office to continue to track those differences in the states and keep up on the differences in the states. And so, it's something that we just figure out how to do. It is something that we continue to lobby through the appropriate associations and directly to try to get a federal overview, but that doesn't always happen in this environment. Is more challenging, I think, than in prior environments. But it is something that, as a business that wants to continue to operate in those states that we operate and wants to continue to sell in the retailers that we sell in, we have to comply with. But it does add a different level of complexity and oversight that you have to be proactive on, because nobody's sending out a memo saying, hey, this Prop 12 in California is going to impact your labeling and you have to change all your labeling. There's a whole cost to that. You have to actively be going out and finding those regulations and seeing how they apply to you, and then making sure that you're adjusting your labor laws, how you pay. We had a challenge in New York that we thought we understood the laws, and when the audits came around, we had to make some adjustments based off of that. And so it's a constant cost and people resource to continue to make sure that you are on top of all of the rules and regulations. So from our standpoint, I agree with you. The more federal it can be, the better that is for us.
Gary, I'm sure you have an opinion on this.
Yeah, well, so Lisa mentioned Prop 12, so we actually looked at that as a market disruptor. So I asked another question: how many of you have seen a yellow taxi sitting at an airport recently? Not very many, right? So think about Uber and Lyft and what it did to that industry. So along comes Prop 12, and we're in the ag industry, and it specifically was focused on us, and it was from California. And if you wanted to sell chicken eggs in California, they had to be free out of a cage. Now, mind you, in our business back through my dad's time, all of our chickens have always been in cages. So all of a sudden, one state says, too bad, you're going to have to get them out. So we've made massive changes to our buildings and our cage system, and actually adapted a new one from over in the Netherlands. And it's an aviary style. And so now our about 6 million chickens, about 45% of them are cage free. So we actually, like Lisa said, Prop 12 came along, and it was a big market disruptor, but we actually grabbed a hold of it and made the changes. And we built a brand new farm, and quite honestly, it's already been paid for because egg prices got so high in Prop 12 states. And now, mind you, there's 13 of them that have adopted that. Now it went on to pork, and it's doing the same thing on hogs. And so it said that you have to have your sows have 24 square feet so they can turn around in a circle. Haven't done that since I was a kid. So we opened up all of our pens, and now we can sell into California, which the prices went up by about 25%. So it's bad on one side, but sometimes it offers opportunities for a company like ours on another side. So,
can I just add to that, just because, to sort of expand on the relativity of that. So the cage-free eggs was a big deal, and there are a lot of activist groups that really want you to go to that. And so we actually would get picketed at our restaurants because they wanted us to do cage-free eggs. The challenge is that we are a very, very small buyer of eggs. And so really to be able to make the impact, to make the eggs have as much widespread impact or widespread distribution and have the costs be where we need them to be, we need the larger players in our industry to go along with that. And so it's really sort of interesting the supply chain impacts can have beyond the supply chain and how that will impact a medium-sized company like ours, that we get pressure from not only regulation but also from activist groups in an industry that we don't really have as much power and control to make the change that needs to happen in the future. So
Lisa, talk to me afterwards. I had a lot of cage-free eggs to sell you.
yeah, we agreed to be cage-free, so we're fine. But it's just interesting how those things play into it down the road, and are not just supply chain related.
And we'll help you cook them.
I know you will.
It seems like you got the easy job.
You do.
Back to kind of like, first of all, I feel really fortunate being in Ohio, especially during the pandemic, and the support and the ability to do business. I would say overall, we're definitely looking for, as much as we can have national compliance, as long as California is not leading what that is. And it's crazy. Any of the politicians, I feel sorry for you. It's a tough world out there, and there's just so many crazy things that are happening. And we're just trying to kind of follow them and see what we have to do. But I'll give you an example, with electric, the sustainability. There's a major push on electric. And you're getting places where they're saying, like, okay, in New York City, you're going to have to move off of gas. And the reality is they haven't really thought it through. There's good intentions. But I will tell you, an example, we have a large national customer, and we were working with them on an oven. And we tested the whole oven. They were using gas, because that's what they did. We tested the whole, a big part of what we do with the customer is making sure our equipment can cook to their specification for the brand. That's critical. Went through the whole thing, ready to go, roll out. Came down from above, got to go electric. We have sustainability goals. It's like, okay. So we went back another 6 months because we had to prove it all again in the way in which the equipment would work. Got that done, ready to roll. Their teams then went around to all their stores in the US, found out it was going to be like $150,000 per store to switch from gas to electric. We're back to gas. There is good intentions, but the reality of people thinking through the practical implications of how they're going to do this is not a strength of the politicians making these regulations.
Yeah, there's all kinds of upstream and downstream implications that are often not thought through. We had gone all cage-free after we sold our Pillsbury baking mix business, and then we bought Hostess. So we're back to the challenge of trying to get cage-free.
Hey, you can talk to me too
We
afterwards.
will,
okay?
don't worry.
This is going to be great. I love this.
Great business opportunity.
We're building a new chicken farm, so we need some more customers.
Let's maybe pause and see if there's any questions from the audience. I don't think there are microphones being passed around, but if anyone has one, just holler at us.
I've got one for you.
Yes, sir.
How aggressively do you approach lobbying federally and in various states to deal with and try to get in front of or to revise things like legislation that's not going to be favorable to the business?
So the question was how involved are each of us in lobbying at the state and or federal level to combat things that may not be appropriate for our business? Did I correct?
Yep.
Okay. So we're a small regional player, so we really use our associations to help us lobby for the things that may or may not be favorable to us. And so we work through that avenue mostly.
So in our history, we've never really had to lobby on anything. We were happy to be just kind of doing our business, but in the last 20 years, I would say, we've had to get more active, but primarily, like Lisa, through our industry association that is involved with their lobbying, fighting, asking us to participate in that way. But we really leave it to our industry association and support them in that.
Yeah, ours is the same exact way. So.
Same here. We're national, but we definitely lean on the industry associations because they provide cover, and they're common issues across our industry. I personally do spend time on the Hill in Washington. I'm technically, really not lobbying because I have GR people that can technically do that, but just approaching policymakers in a way, the approach is just, we're here to help, whether on whichever side of the aisle. It's having a conversation, how can we support them and the issues that they're trying to champion, help them understand where there may be problems, and also talk to them about issues that might be beneficial to business, particularly in Ohio and other states. So it's a pretty similar approach. Pat, do you have any questions? No, we're good. We have a few more minutes, maybe 5. If anybody would like to. Yes, sir.
So Gary, you had mentioned changing, I think you said hundreds of. Gary, I think you'd mentioned hundreds of either changes in your hiring practices or rules that you guys follow. I'm just curious if you could list out you didn't mention any specifics around it. I'm curious what exactly you had to change.
Well, I have a 60-slide deck that takes me about an hour to present, so I can send that to you if you give me your card. But really, it's somewhat centered around 3 words: was indispensable, flexible, and frictionless. So we just tried to become indispensable to our team members, and we tried to take all the friction out of our system. In our area, we have a lot of I'll just say low-skilled production jobs. And so we had it to the point where our IT thought that we were really smart, and they had to go online and fill out a 5-page application that included a resume. Now, mind you, to clean out a barn, right? And we started checking, and they'd get about partway through, and they just stopped doing it, right? So now they literally can text us their name, their email, if they have one, and their phone number, and that's all they have to do. And we used to make them come in to interview. I don't have the gas, I don't have the time, I got to watch my kid, whatever. So now we do phone interviews. We don't even meet them until they come in for orientation. And then we did something really big that probably 90% of you would disagree with. We used to have a 12-panel drug test. We went to 10, we went to 8, we went to 5. We're at 0. So we don't test anybody for drugs anymore. But we trained all of our supervisors, our managers, to be aware if somebody comes in high, if you will, or drunk, of course, or whatever type of thing. And we had one location we have not tested for 2 years, 0 problems. So I don't know. I mean, a lot of people are squirming right now about, oh my God, we had liability drug tests, this and that. I know my HR team did as well, my safety team. I'm like, nope, we're done. We're going to stop it. And one last thing I'll just tell you, CDL drivers, how many of us have to have truck drivers, right? We all do. And guess what? We were short of truck drivers. Well, these truck drivers, they still have flip phones. So one, they don't get on the internet. They don't have social media. They're my age. They're 50 years old. Pick something. And we had them coming in to apply, and our reception would say, we don't have any paper apps anymore. You have to do it on your phone. And we found out later these truck drivers would go like, I can't do it on my phone. Well, do it on social media. I don't have a social media thing. Well, sorry. And they'd send them out the door. So we went back, and we have paper applications in all of our offices. How stupid is that, right? So I'm just saying that I could go on and on forever, but if you give me your card, I'll send you a deck. Because I tell you, there's people out there that want to work. You just have to change the attitude about how you approach them. I think it's so simple. It worked for us, and we're farmers. So,
one thing I just wanted to add back, and it's kind of emphasizing what Lisa talked about culture, and I was saying kind of being an employer of choice, and really what that meant for us. And we feel like we have an unfair advantage because we're employee-owned. So we just have our employee owners at the center of what we're trying to impact. And the way in which we're trying to significantly impact them is, first of all, by having a best place to work and grow. And how do you make people feel valued, appreciated, they're making a difference, they can grow. And a quick example, like one of the things we're very intentional about is we try not to hire jerks. Because, you know, sometimes they'll slip through. But overall, who wants to work with a jerk? Nobody. But people will hire jerks if they're good. And it's like, no, we're not going to do that. So the first thing we do is like, how do you create a best place to work and grow? And then we team it with, we've got to be a thriving company. And what do we need to do to make sure we're, you know, keeping White Castle happy today and tomorrow and solving their problems? The third thing is well-being. We believe deeply in helping people on their well-being journey. And we had, as an example, Mike Gentry from Kettering Health. We opened an on-site health clinic. So for our 1,000 employees, 600 and some hourly production employees who are not connected to the healthcare system, they all can, on-site, see a nurse practitioner or a therapist on the clock for free. And so within that, and then we have this unique model of being employee-owned. Since 2015, all of our folks, if you add up their statements, they have over $100 million in their retirement savings from the ESOP. Doesn't include. All of these things then come together to what creates this opportunity. But I would say at the core of it, it's the culture and people wanting to be there, and what has made it easier for us, because now people are coming saying, like, what's this employee-owned thing? Let's hear about it.
That is a great positive note to end on, because I think we all know that to have any thriving company with any longevity, we've got to have great cultures. And so Gary, Rob, and Lisa, thank you tremendously for your time today. It's a pleasure to sit up here with you and admire all of you for your great businesses and what you've built. So congratulations. Thank you all for being here. I think I'm going to turn it over to Pat.